some colleagues are not here this afternoon, but we'll get underway, and I think we'll be joined by some of them as we proceed. Could I invite Glenn Taylor from the Property Council New Zealand to come forward? Hello and welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. Yourself?
Not too bad.
Excellent.
So thank you for the opportunity to speak today. So my name is Glenn Taylor, and I'm here representing the Property Council of New Zealand. Now, the Property Council is a not-for-profit organisation which represents the country's commercial, industrial, retail, listed and unlisted property funds, property owners, managers and investors. We have over 600 corporate members in New Zealand, which represents billions of dollars of invested commercial property that ranges from leading institutional investors, listed and unlisted property entities, financial organisations to private investors and developers. As building owners, developers, consumers, taxpayers and ratepayers, Property Council's members want to live and work in a vibrant built environment which is economically viable, sustainable, vibrant and a desirable place to live. Today I'm going to raise 4 issues with the annual plan which we consider to be disincentives for investment. These are debt, rates, fees and development contributions. So if we start with debt, just some observations on debt. The debt levels are forecast to be over 1.42 billion for the 2014-15 period, including 575 million in new borrowings. However, I believe that the annual plan doesn't take into consideration the findings of the Kortamento report, which is cause for concern. The higher debt means higher interest payments, which are forecast to be over 59 million for the 2014-15 period. This is of concern in a rising interest rate environment. And finally, the Property Council supports the Council's decision not to take out loans that will be beyond its ability to service and repay, and hopes the Council will continuously explore its funding options so as to reduce debt. The second issue is rates. Property Council has a keen interest in establishing whether rates are calculated transparently, and the reason why particular rates are established. Where deemed necessary, Property Council advocates for rates to be reallocated or the amounts charged to be reduced. We are concerned that the proposed 6.5% increase in rates will significantly add to our members' cost of doing business and will reduce the competitiveness of our region at a time when there are significant challenges and at a time when development in the region should be encouraged rather than having additional barriers, that is, significant increase in costs imposed. Also of concern is that further rates increases have been cited as one of the 5 options to meet the Council's shortfall of 534 million. We encourage Council to review other options and to cover, we encourage Council to review other options to cover this shortfall. And look, I can't sit here as a Property Council member and not talk about the rating differentials. As the Council will be aware, the 2007 inquiry into local government rates, which was the Shand inquiry, set down a series of recommendations pertaining to local government funding and rating, with one of the key recommendations relating to the application of rating differentials. The Shand inquiry recommended that rating differentials be removed from the Local Government Act 2002. This was a very salient recommendation which Property Council supported in 2007 and continues to advocate today. Property Council recommends that the Council eliminates this business differential for 2 reasons. Firstly, the assumption that commercial ratepayers are the primary beneficiaries of land transport infrastructure is incorrect. Secondly, it is simply not acceptable to, without a proper basis, target commercial property owners who are already struggling to trade for profit and to pay a higher rate of contribution than residential ratepayers. The third issue of concern is around the fees. I'd like to make a couple of observations on the proposed building alteration, repairs and new building fees and charges. There is, if I bring this table up on the screen, you might not be able to read it, but there are significant increases proposed in consenting fees. Unfortunately, the percentage increases for the above were shown as a blank in the annual plan report, which was inconsistent with the 30-odd pages of other proposed fees set out in the plan. Look, I can't really understand why the council would show this particular fee increase percentage as a blank, but all I can think is that in some way they're trying to hide the up to 92% fee increase on consents, which is outrageous. We are concerned that the annual plan does not show the true costs of processing consents and other council involvement in the build process. The need for clarity and transparency behind these fees and charges is imperative, and this needs to be questioned by the councillors. The draft annual plan does not provide clarity as to how the new fee structure will work and why it is better than the previous structure. In the absence of this information, we cannot support inspection costs being factored into the computation of these fees based on estimates. We are concerned about the impact increased fees and charges will have on the development community and on the city's overall growth. The charges are particularly worrying the property developers in a building climate that is already overly challenging for all stakeholders. Again, it is of concern that these increases are being proposed at a time when stimulus needs to be made available to those heavily involved in the rebuilding and recovery of Christchurch. And finally, I'd like to raise issues around the development contributions. The draft annual plan correctly states that the Local Government Act 2002 proposes to limit the definition of community infrastructure, and that should the bill be enacted, public libraries and leisure facilities would no longer be recipients of development contributions. Council proposes to include development charges for the public libraries and leisure facilities while it still can in the annual plan. And this is on the premise that it's not clear that these charges or this change will proceed or not proceed. Now, in the interests of best practice, appropriation and budgetary allocation would have been expected to be made to account for the situation where the bill is enacted within the lifetime of the new annual plan, and in the form where development contributions can no longer be collected for libraries and leisure facilities. We would hate for there to be another nasty surprise for the council and hope that this is taken into consideration with the plan. And in summary, it is the Property Council's view that Christchurch City needs to ensure they're putting in place a policy which will encourage reinvestment back into the city and the district. Stimulus which will encourage reinvestment is critical. Increasing rates, increasing consenting fees, the lack of transparency on development contributions are all items which discourage reinvestment. When this is considered alongside other issues such as consenting delays, the lack of transparency, certainty and momentum around some of the anchor projects, the inability to resolve the central city parking issue, which will provide certainty for the retail precinct, increasing construction costs, and a draft district plan which is considered by many well-respected independent planners to be worse than the old plan and possibly the worst in the country. On a cumulative basis, the proposed increases in these other issues will be a disincentive for doing business in Christchurch and will have a multiplier effect on the raising costs of doing business. This is at a time when private investment capital is highly liquid and highly portable, meaning it can be reinvested elsewhere. However, we hope and encourage the new council to take some leadership, to take firm leadership, and come up with a strategy which will ultimately encourage reinvestment back into the central city and the district. The city must remain competitive. This council must remove some of these barriers that I've talked about, these barriers to reinvestment, and they must send a clear message to the development and the property investment community that Christchurch is open for business. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jamie.
I know there's, this is never an ideal forum to be able to
Yeah.
get it's sort of like local government speed dating or whatever, but look, thanks for the submission.
Thanks, Jamie.
I just want to make one comment on, particularly around the DCs, and I thought I'd let you know that at our upcoming strategy and planning meeting, the next one coming up, we've got a report on the formation of a Development Contributions Working Party, and I've put together a chairman's recommendation which has 5 councillors on there and 5 members of the business community, one of which I've recommended as a representative from the Property Council.
Fantastic.
So just keep an eye on that agenda.
No, thanks, Jamie.
That's all right. They've got my committee's got to approve them first, but that's the recommendation anyway. So we do want to work with you.
Right.
My question is, really articulate submission, but does the Property Council have a view on how the council should perhaps raise the funds that's required to balance the books?
Look, Jamie, we don't have a firm view on that, but I would expect that any of the non-performing assets, assets that aren't providing a dividend above market benchmarks, should probably be sold. And so I think a review of those sorts of assets.
Problem is they don't generally get a good sale price though if they're not making any money.
Yeah, look, I think what's the point in keeping them though if they're not actually providing return on investment? So, yeah. And the thing is about that, I know there's an argument, well, should we sell or shouldn't we sell? But these assets, they've been kept pretty much for a rainy day. And what we've got now is pretty much the rainiest day there ever will be. And so it's time to sort of probably free some of those assets up and reduce some debt.
Thank you very much. I'm
Right.
sorry, but, as Jamie says, the kind of speed dating approach to annual planning is probably not the best one, but
Okay. Look, I'm happy to, if anyone
submission
wants
is
to make
valuable.
contact
Certainly
with
want
me,
to
then-
follow up on some of those fee increases because we were told that they didn't operate on. They were an actual charge. That they're just the average charges based on the number of inspections.
Appears to be
but
estimates.
if there's less inspections, it'll cost less. If there's more, it'll cost more. So
Right.
anyway,
Okay,
but
great.
we'll follow that up.
Great, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So.